So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and their challenges, and what's really driving them forward. And today I'm really delighted to have with us Gary O'Brien, who's the Managing Director at Ardent Financial Planning. And Gary, firstly, welcome and thank you for coming on board. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and Ardent to the audience and how you help your clients, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Pleasure to be here. And as you've just said, I'm Gary O'Brien. I'm the Managing Director of Ardent Financial Planning. We are a small financial advisory and financial planning firm based quite close to the centre of York. We're an 11-person business. We have 2 of us that actually own the business, and then we have 9 people, 9 excellent people helping us to drive the business forward. And fundamentally, what we try and do is help people to sort of get their finances in order, take control of their money and take control of their future. And really what we're helping people to do is to sort of live the life they want to live without having to worry too much about running out of money. That's it in a nutshell.
Love it. Perfect. What a great, I'm in, I'm hooked. That works for me. So to start, Gary, if you could kind of maybe talk a little bit about your particular background, how you got into business and why this particular business.
Yeah, if I'm totally honest, completely by accident, which is actually, I suppose it's a bit sad in some respects, but it seems to be that a lot of financial planners never actually envisaged being or had ambitions to be a financial planner when they were at school. It's something that a lot of people sort of find their way into one way or another. And it was kind of the same with me. When I was at school, it was all about sort of engineering and physics and maths and what have you. And I was always going to be either a Formula 1 race engineer or a motorcycle race engineer. And then I sort of got to leaving school after A-levels. And I think that's probably when I realised that actually having a dream is great, but actually it takes a bit of action as well to bring those things to reality. And dreaming of being a Formula 1 mechanic isn't going to actually happen unless you've taken some steps towards making it happen. So I came down to earth with a bump when I sort of left school and realised that I had some good A-levels, but not much else. And so I, as a lot of kids that age do, sort of wrote off to all the big employers in York and basically scrounging for a job. And I ended up working at General Accident here in York, as it was then, Aviva as it is now. And as I say, I came down to earth with a bump because I sat there at General Accident suddenly realising I'm in a sector here that I know absolutely nothing about. It wasn't something which was even on my radar as a kid. All these people around me, very nice people, but they're talking a language that means nothing to me. I just don't understand. And I think probably as a lot of people do at that age, I went through a big wobble thinking, oh my God, is this what being an adult means? That you get 5 weeks holiday a year and you have to sit there in a job that you don't understand. But that was also actually a good turning point for me, because I think at that stage I had a proper sit down and a chat with myself and thought, look, you've got 2 options here. You either get out or you throw yourself into this and give it its best chance, and you actually work out what this thing actually really is. And is there anything in it that holds your attention? And if there isn't, in 2 or 3 years, make an informed choice and leave it. So I threw myself into professional qualifications. I started to work out what financial services actually meant and suddenly realised that this is a world I knew nothing about, but actually it's really interesting. And I say that was when I was, whatever, 19, 20. I'm 55 now and I'm still in it. So that was how I sort of fell into financial services. And then becoming a financial advisor was something which sort of came along after a few years. I sort of realised working at head office that actually, you know, the real end user of these products are the general public. You know, these things that we're designing here at head office are actually used by people to shape their futures and shape their retirements and all that kind of thing. And so this idea of being a financial advisor sort of started to come around probably when I was maybe in my early 30s, something like that. And then the opportunity to really do it probably came along when I was about 40. And that was when I sort of left Aviva as it had become and joined sort of this firm, but it was in a very different sort of format then. But that was when I first sort of stepped into the financial advisory role. And I have to say, it was pretty much everything I kind of envisaged it would be when I was kind of thinking about doing it. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy what I do. I do 2 things, I suppose. One is I'm a financial advisor, and secondly, I run a tiny business. And I'm very lucky in that I enjoy both those roles.
Wonderful.
But yeah, to answer the question, it was a very long answer, but yeah, to answer the question, I actually fell into it by mistake to start with, but then ended up doing something I really love doing.
I think many people do. It is an interesting question. What did you want to be when you grew up? And very few people say exactly what they're doing right now, and but it's nice, you know, it's great to hear that in your cases, and it's true in many cases, but not all, you know, it's not what I plan to do, but I love it, and that's great, because you know, when you really love what you do, then as they say, you never do a day's work in your life. So that's
absolutely.
So from looking at Ardent and how you've grown and how it's been grown, what some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, I suppose in the early days, you know, every person that sets up a new business has those challenges of, you know, you've got your new business and you're very proud to have done that, but then you think, right, okay, so where's the first client coming from?
Yes.
And there's little things like, actually, where does the money come from as well, and all those sorts of things. So the early days, obviously, it's a financial struggle, and I think it probably is for most people setting up a business from pretty much from scratch.
Yes.
But even back then, you know, Mark, there were actually 4 of us originally that owned the business, but 2 of the guys have now sort of subsequently retired. But Mark and I were there from day one, and you know, we had, even back then when money was tight and customers were very hard to come by, we sort of had this idea that actually this is for the long term, and you've got to take a long-term view here, and you've got to be prepared to invest in your business, even when there's so little money that you're not really even taking a wage home to your wife and kids. We still sort of knew the importance of making sure that we actually pumped plenty of money back in, in order to build strength and resilience and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was one of the key challenges, you know, those first 3-4 years when clients are very hard to come by, you've got no reputation, you're out there sort of fighting for every single opportunity that you get, and yet at the same time having the discipline to leave money behind in the business to help it grow and as I say, to make it strong and resilient. Then you sort of get to a point, don't you, where, you know, suddenly it's no longer such a battle to find your next client. You know, you start, if you're doing the job well, you actually start to get a little bit of a reputation, and word of mouth starts to spread, and customers suddenly become not easy to find, but easier. And then I think the challenges then become about sort of, how do we constantly keep abreast of this thing? How do we always sort of try and make sure that we're actually doing things as well as we can, as well as they could be, giving the customers that best experience and all that kind of thing. And that's when you sort of also get busy at looking at the business from a sort of different angle, and how can we actually take this forward in a direction that we really want to take it. So they then become your key challenges, looking at better systems, better ways, you know, bringing in more people, which again obviously adds to the expense, but bringing in more people so that you can improve that customer experience. Yeah, and I think, and that still continues to this day, I suppose. You know, we have 5 sort of core values in the business, and one of them is continuous improvement. So we're sort of always asking that question, how can we do this even better?
Brilliant.
And we've literally just this week had the results in from a client survey that we've just recently done, and the feedback's fantastic, which is, you're always very worried when you open those spreadsheets to see what people are actually saying about us, but the feedback's been absolutely tremendous from the clients. But even then, you kind of pick up on those 1 or 2 little nuances where they say, but maybe this could be just a little bit. And so you focus on that bit and think, right, okay, so how do we make sure that we don't get that comment next time we do it?
Right.
So yeah, it's a constant sort of search for improvement. We're very, very lucky in that we have, you know, a fantastic loyal base of clients. And we're equally as lucky in that we have a very loyal, fantastic team. You know, we hardly ever lose a staff member. And again, we've done staff engagement surveys with the team, and you know, they genuinely seem to really understand what we do here and love being a part of it.
Brilliant.
So we consider ourselves very lucky. We have great clients, we have a great team behind us, and that obviously makes the job so much easier. Brilliant.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely fantastic. So what would you say are some of the most important things you've learned about business and potentially about life, but certainly business?
Yeah, I think actually I've probably learned about business what I've also learned in life, and that's come from sort of setting up and running your own business, but it's also come from just life itself. And I think the big thing I probably learned back in my early 20s, when I sort of went through that wobble and all the rest of it, and then I had that word with myself and everything, and I sort of realized, yeah, it's really important to have goals and ambitions, and want to sort of make something happen in the future. And obviously we're a financial planning firm, you know, we put financial plans together for clients that straddle 40 years, you know, so it's all about the future in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think the real key learn for me is, yeah, it's great to have an eye on the future, but actually true happiness happens now. And don't save up that happiness for when you get to that retirement age, or when you get to that certain point that you're building up for. You've got to enjoy the trip.
Yeah.
And, you know, even when business was hard in those early years, we still enjoyed it. You know, it was a challenge, and we always rose to those challenges. And yeah, we wanted to build a business and have all these sort of things that meant we could call ourselves a success. But actually, you know, the happiness happens in the day.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. I can't think, there's a great phrase about the past is gone, you know, the past is gone, the future's yet to come, but it's the now that the now is that the now is here. So and I think there's a quote from Kung Fu Panda that says it's called the present. I think it's called it's a gift, that's why it's called the present, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. That is one of my, I've only ever heard that in Kung Fu Panda, and that is one of my favorite quotes of all time. I think it's, what is it, something like the past is history, the future is a mystery.
History.
Yeah.
That's the one.
But yeah, I can't remember what the next bit is, but then it says, and that's why it's called the present.
Yeah, now is the gift. I think it's a gift.
Yeah, now is a gift, and that's why it's called the present. Yeah, I think that's it.
No, I love it. And absolutely, funnily enough, I was talking a little while ago to Oscar Ackel, who runs Lucia's and Cut and Craft.
Right,
and yeah. The quote, you know, a quote he loves, which I thought was really simple, which is very much about, you know, and he said, don't look backwards because you're not going in that direction. And it sort of is very relevant, I think. But yeah, live life now. I think that's a wonderful way of looking at things. And so just thinking, obviously we're a coaching organisation. I'm interested to know who the best coach is you've ever had, whether it's business or life or, you know, sport, and what made them a great coach for you.
That's good. I mean, obviously we all have lots of influences.
Yeah.
One thing I also hark back to is for a few years I actually belonged to a philosophy group in York, and I think that's also, again, telling me what I already kind of knew, but in a deeper way. You know, just about this. The only thing that really exists is the present moment, and you know, you've got to actually sort of really enjoy that. So I picked up a lot of really useful stuff from being a member of that group. Within this actual sort of sector, there are quite a few people out there. A key one is a guy called Paul Armston, who was one of the early adopters of financial planning in the UK. And we went to go and see him give a presentation, probably back in the early days of our business. And that was a real sort of penny dropping moment. Yeah. You know, and his message was, again, and there's quite a lot of philosophy in that, you know, he kept saying, and still says to this day, you know, life is not a rehearsal. You know, it's happening and it's passing right now. So you've got to live it. And you know, he sort of showed the real value of financial planning and said, you know, anyone with a couple of years experience and a bit of knowledge about markets can recommend pensions or ISAs or so on. And he said that's not really, and that tends to be where a lot of firms charge the biggest fees, you know, setting up a pension or whatever. He said the thing that's going to actually deliver real value to people is giving them a vision of their future and showing them what they need to do to actually bring that vision to reality. Yeah. And I'd say we saw that presentation and we thought, that's what we need to be doing. And that was kind of almost overnight when we switched to being more of a financial planning firm than an advisory firm, because we realized that's where the true magic happens.
Love it. That's fascinating. I mean, you know, in what we do, what I do is very much help people plan what their business is going to look like to give them the lifestyle they choose to have, because obviously business, for many business owners, the business is the key vehicle. And it does amaze or surprise me how few business people actually plan what their business needs to look like to give them what they want. They don't, you know, we don't connect that. We just unfortunately get on the hamster wheel of working really hard and really get off for long enough to say, well, actually, where's it going and what do I want from it? So I can see how that would align with what you do with other forms of finance. So
yeah. I think it's right. It's stepping off the merry-go-round, isn't it? And just actually sort of taking that time out to just sort of, see things from a different perspective. Yes. In the day-to-day, we get sort of bogged down sometimes. But yeah, just taking that time out to reflect and think about what it is what you're about, and what difference and what impact you want to make out there. It's priceless.
Absolutely. And interesting to think about, you know, the point about the present and living the present is one of the things I often say to people in business is, ultimately the challenge of owning and running your own business is typically the buck stops with us. That's the sort of the downside of all this. But the upside is we get to choose exactly how it is. And how we run and structure our business can be totally different to how anybody else runs or structures a similar business. And it's like we can choose, so we can create the present the way we want it to be on a daily basis, which many people don't have as much choice. So absolutely. That is a great benefit. Are there any other quotes or sayings? Obviously, we talked all about the present. Any other quotes or sayings that you live by that you fall back on in difficult times, perhaps?
There probably are, but bringing them to my
that's okay.
No, I mean, my memory's so appalling. I mean, the guys here laugh at me because we have a quarterly offsite meeting where we take the whole team and we share everything about the business, how it's performing, what everything's looking like. And I will almost invariably come up with some stories and sagas that I've picked up from books that I've read and what have you. I mean, one of my favorites is, I don't know if you've come across it, you probably will have done it in your line of work, but the starfish story, where a guy goes down to the beach one morning and he looks and thinks, what's happening here? And as he gets closer, hundreds and hundreds of starfish are being washed up. Have you come across this one?
It rings a bell, but no, please go on.
I'm going to tell you something. This was the story that I actually gave at the last offsite meeting. But I remember a national sales manager telling this at one of the national conferences when I was at Aviva. So basically, this guy runs down to the shoreline and starts picking these starfish up and throwing them back into the sea. And there's hundreds of them. The beach is covered. And after a few minutes of doing this, another guy comes down and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, take a look. Hundreds of starfish have been washed up. I'm throwing them back to safety." And the guy says, "Well, have you seen how many there are?" He says, "There's thousands of them, mate. What difference do you think you're going to make?" And the guy bends down, picks up another one and throws it back into the sea and says, "Well, it made the world of difference to that one." And I love that because, we're an 11-person firm. We're not going to change the world. But actually, we can change a few people's worlds, and we do.
Wow.
And that's a massive thing, I think.
Love it. One step at a time.
Yeah. So as I say, I probably have tons of these things, but to regurgitate them all.
What a great story. It reminds me, I'm listening to Will Smith's autobiography at the moment as an audio, and it's brilliant as an audio. And I know he's obviously been in the news quite a lot recently, but he tells the story. His first chapter is telling the story of his dad making he and his brother build a wall, and it was like so big. It was 6 foot high and about 20 foot long. It was just massive for two sub 10-year-olds. And they after school every day they were building this wall. And they thought it would never end, and it was lit. The story learned was it's a brick at a time. It's eventually they did it, and it took a long time. It felt like an amazing thing, but it was one brick at a time, and just commit to the brick. But wowzers, I love that story. It rang a bell, but I don't think I've heard it for a very long time. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome.
I'm really fascinated that you're obviously a philosopher as well. So that's that's really interesting. So what would you say you've learned about yourself during your journey through business and life?
Well, in some ways, I suppose what you learn is that you don't really change at one level. What you were when you think back to the earliest you is kind of still who and what I am now in many respects. So at one level, I don't think we do change that much. Obviously, we learn a lot. We get lots of experiences, and we'll do things differently because of those experiences and so on. But I think the underlying sort of core thoughts and beliefs, I think, are pretty well there, aren't they? Certainly by the time you get to adulthood, if not quite a long time before then. So the things that were always sort of important to me still are now, and I'm lucky enough to be in business with Mark, who we share a lot of those common. We're very, very different people, but we share a lot of very sort of common values, which and they're pretty much set, I think. And this idea of making sure that we made the business strong even before we actually had enough money to take home. It was all about sort of taking care of the goose that lays the golden egg sort of thing. And then as we got big enough to start taking on people, that same sentiment was put there as well. We've always put our people first, really, our clients and our people first. And I think a good example, I suppose, is in 2020 when COVID struck and lockdown was suddenly a thing. we were able to bring the team in, and we were able to say to them, look, we've got no clue what this COVID thing is. We've got no clue how long it's going to last. I think my guess was it's probably going to take us maybe until the summer to get this behind us. Yeah. Summer of 2020, so that's how much I knew. But what we were able to say to them was, we built this business to be strong and to be resilient. Yep. And so if Mark and I are not lying awake at night worrying about this thing called COVID, you don't need to.
Brilliant.
And 18 months later, when we reopened the office again, all the team that wanted to be here was still here. So yeah, a lot of satisfaction in that, putting those values in the order that we put them, and making sure that, our people are protected, our clients are protected, the business is protected before we think about ourselves. That proved to be a really good lesson in life, I suppose.
No, it's super. It's really, I found it really interesting. One of the things I picked up some time ago was, and a belief I've developed, is that good relationships, whether in business or life, come with a match of goals. You both want to achieve the same thing, and that's great. But great relationships, long-term relationships, will come with a match of values. And if you get your values right, you will have long-term relationships with clients, with team. And as you said, very few people leave, and that would be a real, indicator of the strength of your values. And what not enough businesses do is broadcast those values far and wide, because if we broadcast them, we attract like-minded people. So we get A-grade team members, A-grade clients, A-grade suppliers, because they believe the same things are important, and therefore you're immediately on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
And we've had our core values, and again, we involved the whole team putting these together probably 10 years ago, and they're still the same now. But we've been a bit slow, really, with that, in a sense that we talk to them all the time with the team, but our clients maybe wouldn't know what our core values were. And we're literally just this week, we've had decals made for the walls, and so every single meeting we're going to have all 5 of our core values in there with a little description as to what they actually mean. And we need to sort of maybe get them on the website as well.
100%. I mean, all I can say is, is that reflection. Your values will have had a big impact on your retaining your team, because they understand what you're about. And the same happens with your clients. Your clients probably already get it to some extent, or the key clients, but especially from a point of view of attracting more key clients like the ones you've got, is because your existing clients probably know what makes you different. It's the ones we want to attract. We want to attract the ones that value what we do. And then the relationship is very strong right from day one. So it's always great to broadcast our values and tell people what we're all about, and then there's no surprises, and we can build really good long-term relationships. So we looked back a little bit, and obviously we talked a bit about the present, but if we do look to the future, what does it look like for yourself and Ardent, and what challenges, if any, do you think you might face?
Well, actually, the future is looking really good. Probably as good as it's ever looked, really. And partway through lockdown, we had a mortgage arm in the business, and partway through lockdown, the mortgage guys came to us and said, look, we'd be really interested in sort of taking the mortgage side of the business off you and becoming independent of you. Which, and they pitched this to us, they said, which would allow you to focus just purely on financial planning. It would allow us to focus purely on mortgages and that sort of side of the market, because they're quite different markets, and quite different clients, and quite different needs and processes and whatever. So when you're a small business, you've got 2 very different propositions. You've got to obviously divide resources and so on between them. So their sort of pitch to us was, it allows you to just focus on one core proposition, us to focus on one. And so that happened. They're now independent of us. We're still on, very good terms. We still use them for our mortgage advice, but they're independent. And what they said to us has proved to be absolutely true. We've now got this much more narrower focus on the financial planning side. So we're just, our business year starts in April. So this is our first year of being just a financial planning firm. And we're already sort of seeing the benefits of that in exactly the way that the mortgage guys kind of predicted. So I think, the future's looking as strong as ever for us, because, the resource we've got, we can now plow into just that one area. So going back to our sort of continuous improvement value, I think we're going to see improvements to the way we do things coming thick and fast. And we're all quite excited about it, actually.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it shines through. Wonderful. So I'm interested in what you would say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now.
Well, I mean, I say to my kids, and they both take the mickey out of me, but, you know, I say to them, look, if I was going to give you an advice, I'd say dare to dream it, dare to try it. And what I've already said, you know, but just remember that happiness is, you know, in the moment, day to day sort of thing. And in a way, that's what I would sort of say to anyone that's thinking of business. I would say, be sure, as sure as you can be, that you've got a good idea.
Yep.
You know, be sure there's a need there that you can actually meet. You don't have to be absolutely certain of it, because you're going to learn shed loads from day one. But don't be rash. Don't just rush in there with a harebrained, half-baked, you know, give it some proper thought. And if you think that that's something that you can provide a service for or meet a need for, then go for it. Dare to dream and dare to try. Obviously, take as much risk out of it as you can. So if it's something you could start up whilst you've still got a job somewhere else, so you've got some security of income and so on, then perfect. You know, try and manage and mitigate the risks as best you can. But yeah, if you think you've got a need there that you can meet, then let you go for it.
Brilliant, love it. Yeah.
I used to work, as I've said, you know, at Aviva for many years, and I'm certainly not knocking the place at all, because I met some of my closest friends. I met my wife there, and I did some great jobs around the country. So I had a great time there. I was there nearly 20 years. But then when you get into a small business, I think you took something earlier, Chris, that what you suddenly realise is just how dynamic this is. And if someone comes up with a good idea, it doesn't matter whether it's an apprentice or whether it's a client or whoever, if someone comes up with a good idea, you think, yeah, we should really be trying that. A week later, you are. Now, you try doing that in an Aviva or a big organisation, there's probably 2 years worth of projects to actually get that thing off the ground, whereas in a small business, it's so agile. So if you start something and it's actually not quite panning out the way you wanted it to, or you actually spot a better opportunity along the way, you've got that agility to change tack, change direction, and do it in a different way.
Brilliant. Absolutely. And it is that ability to sort of shape your own future, I think, that, you know, is the wonderful thing about having your own business, our own business. And but yeah, and comes with its own challenges, because it is about us, and you know, being leaders, we do have to define it and give other people confidence that we know what we're doing, which you know isn't always the case, I guess. Certainly in my experiences of myself, sometimes it's about believing before we actually see the outcome, and it's believing in that we're doing the right thing and doing our best to make that decision or that choice the right one by our actions and by our confidence. That's not always an easy thing to do. And you know, if you started again, just about interest, is there anything that you would do differently?
To be honest, I mean, it's a hard one in a way, because obviously we now sort of know things that we didn't know 15 years ago when we set up, and you know, as we've just said, you know, now not having a mortgage arm does make the business so much more streamlined. But does that mean, so if I started again tomorrow, I wouldn't have, or if I started again 15 years ago, I wouldn't have a mortgage arm? Then probably not, because we'll learn shed loads from working with those guys, and you know, a lot of clients will come to us because we had a mortgage proposition. So I think wherever you start from, you have to accept the fact there's going to be a lot of learning to do. And there's probably going to be a lot of changes that you'll need to make. You're not going to get it right first time. In fact, you're probably not going to get it right ever, as right as you'd like it to be. So you've got to jump in somewhere, and then you've got to learn as best you can from the experiences that happen, you know, as you go along. So to be honest, I probably wouldn't change anything, because you don't know what those influences in the past, what effect those influences have had on you now.
Absolutely.
And it's tempting to think, oh, well, if we'd done this and that differently, then it would have been so much better. But maybe it wouldn't have been, because you'd have also lost something that you've otherwise had. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult to pick the bones out of it, isn't it? It's like, we're here due to all the decisions we've made and actions we've taken. And if we'd have taken any one of them slightly differently, then we might not be here. And if we're happy here, then that's all good. And it might be a slightly different question, it might be similar, but just sort of finally, I'm interested to know what advice you might give to an 18-year-old you if you had the opportunity.
No, I think it would be similar, really. Again, you know, to just keep your eyes open, you know, be receptive, you know, don't dismiss anything, really. Sort of, you know, be open to suggestions, listen to people, you know, observe what's going on around you, and learn what you can from it. But there is just an element of you've got to just jump in.
Yeah.
And you know, you only get these experiences by actually doing something.
Yeah.
And whether that's going and working at a big global organization, or whether it's, you know, starting up your own business or whatever. As I say, you know, I started off feeling really out of sorts in my career, thinking this isn't what I had in mind at all. What the hell am I doing here? I don't understand what these people are even saying. And then sort of thought, well, you know, you never are going to do unless you actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So throw yourself in, learn something, take some exams, and see what you think once you've actually got a bit of knowledge to make a decision on.
Yeah. I really love that point about making an informed decision. You know, you're doing enough to give you the evidence about whether this is right or not, because otherwise it's just opinion, isn't it? And opinion, unfortunately, is, you know, it's a belief which can be positive or negative. But how about getting a bit more evidence to support one or other belief? Yeah.
And as I said before, you know, like with starting your own business, you know, don't be rash. And if you really are doing something that you don't enjoy and you want to be doing something different, well then, you know, have a plan as to how you're going to transition from one to the other. Don't just sort of storm out or whatever, you know. Take as much risk out of things as you can, but you're never going to take all the risk out. No. We've got to take some chances in life.
I mean, from a business perspective, my belief is, you know, typically risk equals profit. So that, you know, the higher the risk, the higher the profit, and obviously the lower, but potentially the lower the risk, the lower the profit. It's rare that you can have high, you know, low risk, high profit. It does exist occasionally, but it is about understanding that, you know, if I want to, you know, profit from it, whether that's financial profit or any other form of benefit, it often comes with an element of risk, and it's being comfortable with that. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, it's been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much. The time seems to whiz by in many ways. Is there any sort of last thoughts that you have about anything we've talked about today, or anything that would be good just to discuss before we close?
I think we've probably covered most of it, Chris, to be fair. I think, you know, running a business, you know, it has its ups and its downs, as does everything. You know, being employed by a big employer has its ups and its downs.
Yes.
So I wouldn't want to sort of give the impression that it's a walk in the park. It's not. But it's, you know, I look back on the 15 years I've been doing this so far, and think how far we've come as a firm. And you know, we look back and laugh at where we sort of started off on day one to where we are now.
Yep.
So even though sometimes it's hard work, sometimes it's long days, sometimes there's a bit of stress involved or whatever, but then that's life, isn't it? You know, life generally has all those qualities.
Yep.
But I've even given those stresses and what have you from time to time, I don't think I've ever once thought I shouldn't have done this.
Brilliant.
I've always thought, I'm so glad that I did.
Brilliant. Well, and it shows, and I think that's really wonderful to meet someone that's so engaged with what they do and how they help people, and that you're in the right place and you've made the right choices over that time. So thank you so much for taking the time today. Maybe we could come back in 12 months or so and just see what the next chapter is at Ardent. So, well, thank you so much, Gary. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.